Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why some people just seem to click instantly, while others take ages to warm up? Or why a simple glance can make you feel more connected, or completely shut off? Well, new research dives deep into how our eyes play a huge role in building friendships. This study explored whether and how we learn from seeing direct or averted eye gaze in others. Imagine you are meeting someone new and they look at you directly versus looking away. Does that simple exchange change how you feel about them over time? These scientists used a clever game and some smart computer modeling to find out. We all know eye contact is a big deal in social stuff. It tells us if someone's paying attention, what they might be thinking, and if they want to talk to us or avoid us. Looking directly into someone's eyes often makes us feel more attracted to them, more likable, and more connected. On the flip side, when someone looks away, it can feel like they're disengaging. But here is the twist. How we react to eye contact isn't always the same. It can depend on the person we're interacting with, our own feelings, and even our culture. For example, if you are really shy, direct eye contact can be tough. And if someone you already find a bit off-putting looks at you, it might not feel so great. The really interesting part is that in real life, we have lots of these small gaze exchanges over time. We don't just meet someone and immediately know how we feel. Our feelings change slowly as we interact. So, the big question the study tackled was, how do these repeated interactions, especially the little eye gaze moments, actually shape our opinions and how close we feel to someone? They turned to a scientific idea called reinforcement learning, which is basically how we learn from rewards and punishment. Think about training a pet. Every time it does something good, you give it a treat. We do something similar but with our social feelings. So these researchers set up a game where people chose between two faces. Each face had a habit. One would usually look directly at you, like 70% of the time, and the other would usually look away, also 70% of the time. After each choice, participants then said how close they felt to both faces. Their theory was that seeing direct gaze would feel good, like a small reward if it happened more often than expected. It would create a positive learning signal in our brains, making us like that person more and feel closer to them. If someone looked away more than expected, it would be the opposite, leading to negative learning signals and feeling more distant. They wanted to see if computer models could explain this learning process and how it changed people's feelings over time. To test this, they gathered 106 participants online. These participants played a game for 100 rounds. In each round, two faces appeared on the screen. Participants clicked on the face they wanted to interact with. After they chose, that face would either look directly at them or look away. They were told that one face would do this about 70% of the time and the other face would do the opposite. Crucially, the participants didn't know which face was which. At first, after each interaction round, they rated how close they felt to both the face they chose to interact with and the face they didn't choose. They used pictures of two female faces that were carefully chosen to be similar in attractiveness and other traits, so the only real difference was the gaze behavior. This way, they could be sure that any changes in feelings were due to the eye contact, not other things about the faces. They also used questionnaires to measure things like social interaction anxiety, just to see if that played a role. The game itself was pretty simple. Two faces would appear, and you'd pick one. Then the chosen face would either give you direct eye contact or avert its gaze. This happened for 100 trials. Afterwards, they asked participants to rate their closeness to each face again, and also to guess how often each face made eye contact. They used some fancy math called logistic linear mixed effects models to see if people's choices changed over time. Basically, they wanted to know if they started preferring one face over the other. As the game went on, they also used linear mixed effects models to analyze the closeness ratings, looking at how those changed with each interaction. This is where it gets really interesting. They use reinforcement learning models. Think of them like little computer brains learning from experience. These models try to figure out the value of interacting with someone based on whether the outcome was good or bad. In this case, direct gaze was treated as a good outcome and averted gaze as a not. So good one. A key part of these models is the prediction error. This is the difference between what you expected to happen and what actually happened. If you expected someone to look away but they looked at you, that is a positive prediction error, a pleasant surprise. If you expected eye contact but got averted gaze, that is a negative prediction error. A bit of a disappointment. They tested a few different models to see which one best explained the data. At the start of the game, people didn't really favor one face over the other, but as the game went on, something shifted. Participants started choosing the face that was more likely to make direct eye contact more and more often. This suggests they were learning to prefer the direct gaze person. The closeness ratings were also telling. While overall closeness didn't change drastically, they found that after a direct gaze response, people felt a little closer to that person. And crucially, over the 100 trials, closeness towards the direct gaze biased face tended to increase, while closeness towards the averted gaze biased face tended to decrease. This shows that our feelings of closeness can actually change based on these small gaze interactions. When they looked at the computer models, they found that the best one to explain the participants' choices was a model that included a reward calibration parameter. This parameter is super important because it means that people value direct gaze differently. For some, direct gaze is a big reward, while for others, it is not as rewarding or maybe even a bit less pleasant. This model explained about 42% of the choice behavior, which is pretty good. Even more excitingly, the prediction errors from the model were directly linked to how people's feelings of closeness changed from one trial to the next. When the actual gaze behavior was better than expected, a positive prediction error, people reported feeling closer. When it was worse than expected, a negative prediction error, they reported feeling less close. This strongly supports the idea that we're learning and updating our feelings based on whether gaze is a pleasant surprise or a disappointment. Remember that reward calibration parameter, they explored what made it different for people. It turned out that if someone initially found a face less attractive or less pleasant, they tended to calibrate direct gaze as less rewarding. This means your first impression can actually change how much you value eye contact from someone. And the way people calibrated their reward sensitivity also influenced their final impressions. Those who down-calibrated direct gaze, meaning they found it less rewarding, ended up rating that person as less close, attractive, and generally positive afterwards. This shows a two-way street. First impressions influence learning, and learning then shapes final impressions. So what does all this complicated stuff mean? It means that our eye gaze isn't just a way to show we're looking at someone. It is a dynamic tool that actively shapes how we feel about them. When someone gives us direct gaze, especially if it is more than we expected, it acts like a little reward that makes us like them more and feel closer. When they avert their gaze more than we expect, it pushes us away. The fact that a computer model can predict these changes in our feelings based on learning signals is pretty profound. It shows that even these tiny nonverbal interactions are constantly teaching us about who to approach and who to keep our distance from. This study really highlights that eye contact is like a social signal that triggers learning. It can build up our preference for someone or make us feel more distant. It is not just about liking someone because they look nice. It is about a continuous learning process. The researchers noted that even though the game was very simple, without any emotional expressions or complex social cues, the gaze behavior alone was enough to create a noticeable change in preference. And for closeness, it's not just that direct gaze makes us feel closer, but averted gaze can actually make us feel more distant, almost like a subtle form of social exclusion. Interestingly, while social anxiety didn't change who people chose to interact with, it did seem to make them more sensitive to those gaze cues. People with higher social anxiety showed stronger shifts, feeling even closer with repeated direct gaze and more distant with repeated averted gaze. This suggests they might be paying extra attention to signals of inclusion and exclusion. However, the researchers did mention that the study was done with the general population, so these effects might be even stronger in people with diagnosed social anxiety. The core finding really is that reinforcement learning is the engine behind how gaze changes our social bonds. That prediction error, the difference between what we expected from someone's gaze and what we got, is the key driver. When that error is positive, we feel closer. When it is negative, we feel less so. This makes sense when you think about how we learn in general. When we get positive feedback, we approach. And when we get negative feedback, we withdraw. This study shows this principle applies to even the subtlest social cues like eye contact. What is also really neat is that the study found everyone's learning is calibrated differently. Your initial impression of someone, like how attractive or pleasant you find them, can influence how rewarding you perceive their eye contact to be. The less attractive you found someone initially, the less rewarding their direct gaze might feel. And this then feeds into how you feel about them overall. It's a powerful reminder that our social interactions are deeply personal. So, what does this mean for us? For everyday interactions, it suggests that consistently returning someone's gaze can, over time, help build a stronger connection through these positive learning experiences. It's not just a static cue, but something that helps us build relationships. In clinical settings, especially when working with people who struggle with social interactions, understanding that eye contact can be a learned reward is important. Instead of forcing eye contact, therapists might focus on creating a safe environment where positive gaze interactions can gradually build trust. And for things like chatbots or avatars, understanding this learning process could help them interact with us in more personalized and effective ways, adapting their gaze based on our responses. The biggest strength of this study is using this sophisticated reinforcement learning framework to look at something as subtle as eye gaze. It really helps us understand the how behind how our social preferences change. By keeping the gaze cues very simple, they could isolate the effect of eye contact. However, because the study used simple animated faces, it might not capture all the complexities of real-life interaction. Virtual reality or even talking to real people would give a richer picture also. The lack of a specific social goal in the game might have led people to have different personal aims. Finally, while they looked at social anxiety, the sample wasn't clinically diagnosed. So more research with specific groups would be useful. In a nutshell, this study shows that repeated eye gaze exchanges can seriously change how much we like someone and how close we feel to them. Direct gaze can be a subtle reward that encourages us to approach, while averted gaze can push us away. What is really crucial is that this learning is personalized based on our past experiences and initial impressions. It's a fascinating look into the deep, often unconscious ways our eyes shape our social world. I think this research is super important because it highlights how even the smallest social cues can have a big impact on our relationships. It tells us that social learning is a continuous process, and our brains are constantly updating our feelings about others based on these subtle interactions. It's a cool reminder that the way we look at someone and the way they look back really matters. What do you all think? Have you ever felt yourself warming up to someone just because they consistently made good eye contact? Or felt a barrier go up when they kept looking away? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this video interesting, please give it a like and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more dives into the fascinating world of psychology. And as always, thanks for watching.